Welcome to Books in the Freezer, a podcast dedicated to the deliciously disturbing world of horror fiction. I'm your host, Stephanie, and today I am joined by author LC Allingham to discuss her novella Muse and art horror. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I am excited to have you on. I have been thinking about this subgenre. Well, actually, kind of wondering if it was, like, something we could do an episode on. I think ever since I
Mhm.
saw the new remake of Candyman, I'm like, "Ooh, art horror,
Mhm.
that's probably a thing, right?"
I think it is. It doesn't seem like it's, like, officially a thing, but it's
Mhm.
always kind of, like, around in the fringes.
Can you tell us about your novella, Muse?
So, Muse I am so bad at this part. Muse is about 3 movers and shakers in the art world. Like, they're, like, the cream of the crop. They're the guys who make all the decisions. They're the kingmakers. And they all have their own talents that they use to sort of elevate artists from, the streets doing street art to being like the darlings of the galleries. But while they're kind of squeezing out the best of these artists' work, they're sort of draining everything else out of the artists, almost like feeding off of them. And they have ways that they do this that they almost have down to a science. But what ends up happening is that while the artists end up achieving these like heights of fame, they burn out so hard and fast that they're never heard of from again, while these men continue to profit off of their work for years to come. And now at the beginning of this story, they've gotten to the point where they've gone through all of their artists. They are burning through them so quickly that they don't have enough left, and they want to find something new and better and that they can really work on for a long time, and somebody that they can just make, the next Vincent van Gogh, the next Georgia O'Keeffe. And one of them has a talent for finding people. He's the art agent. And he uses his talent to find this obscure little trailer park where this very strange, uneducated woman is kind of living a reclusive life, painting the most brilliant paintings that anyone has ever seen. So he immediately sweeps her up, puts her in New York, and they all start trying to elevate her into being the biggest thing. And they don't have to try much because her art is so compelling to everybody who sees it. But that's where everything starts to kind of go off course. And the way that they've always done things isn't really working for them anymore. And there seems to be a little bit more going on around the edges of things that almost seem a bit paranormal, and the powers that are sort of channeled through their artist to make art starts to get a little dangerous, almost like something from the ether is about to burst through the seams of reality. So that's all.
Just that. I really loved the direction that it took.
Yeah.
So I do have to ask, I mean, what is your personal relationship with art?
So I come from a family of artists. I don't know that there is anyone in my family that isn't an artist or a craftsman or some kind of creator in some way. So my mother and my grandmother were both award-winning watercolor artists, and my father is a musician and a craftsman. My brother is a composer. Not everybody's working in their art, but they all kind of are doing it. Like, we all have that compulsion to create, and I grew up in that environment. I myself am an artist and a musician as well as an author, but writing is more my compulsion than anything else.
I love that, and you mentioned that in your acknowledgments, but there's something about the rage in Muse at the exploitation of artists, and I kinda wanted to know if that came from personal experience.
It's for me, I always dabbled. so I was never, like, important enough for people to exploit in the things that I did. So I worked as a musician in my 20s, but it was like, my fun job that I did at night after working my 9 to 5. I worked as a graphic designer, but it wasn't the kind of, like, thing where I was, like, designing lines of clothing or, like, designing big campaigns. I was just doing local graphic design, and as an artist, I, would do a show here or there, but it was never, I would always kind of at the bottom of the tier, but I saw it happening to people above me
Mhm.
a lot. I had some friends when I was in music that signed the record contracts and immediately lost all control of what they were doing and were just told, like,
Yeah.
"Get in the studio, record all day for a week." I had a friend who cut his hair, and made him they made him go to the salon and get extensions. Um, they lost all
Wow.
autonomy, and my family was never in, like, the art elite of New York, but I know that it happens where you basically once you put your work out there and you take the money,
Mhm.
you lose control over what it is that you're creating, and people immediately start trying to claim their pound of flesh off of you. I paid for you, so you need to do what I want you to do. You need to
Yeah.
dance for me. And yeah, it's a really weird dynamic that is scary because an artist shouldn't have to be a salesperson. They shouldn't have to be the person that's selling themselves and putting their stuff out in the world. Although we know now with indie publishing and indie art and all that stuff, that's a lot of what we do.
Mhm.
Um, but these people are supposed to be elevating them and helping them get their work out there, but it becomes less about the creation and more about the exploitation, it seems like.
Could definitely sense the frustration in that. And yeah, I mean, I see that with authors having to even a trad pub having to just like hustle to
Right.
get their marketing out there and get the word out. It just seems like a job that never ends,
It does.
you know?
Yeah, and it's
You're
like
just
it
always
takes
on.
away from the actual creating and
Mhm.
making the work that people want, and yet it's so necessary in order for it to get in front of the people who want it.
In your acknowledgments, you talk about how your mother was an art teacher
Mhm.
and several conversations you had about art and inspiration and about as an artist when the work itself goes from you being in control of it to the work taking a life of its own and you kind
Right.
of directing it. What was that point in Muse?
I feel like Muse a lot of my work, but particularly Muse, just sort of dropped into my head.
Mhm.
So for Muse, it was almost from the very beginning that just had sort of a vibe that I was trying to capture, and it just bloomed into this story with the associates and Cedric, who's a point of view character, and Tara, and they were there. I know
Mhm.
Stephen King has an analogy in his On Writing where you're not writing the book, you're uncovering a fossil. And that's a lot how this felt. Now there's times, like, where also like, I think it took me through to, like, the middle of the story, and then it just crashed out and bottomed out on me, and I was like, "Okay, so where do I want this to go?" And as
Mhm.
soon as I sort of figured out where it was going, it was more like, like, directing the ship and then, like, setting the sails and letting the wind take me off again. So a lot of this story was that just riding the wave of inspiration, but then you have to go back and you have to refine it and edit it, which is something I always had a little bit more trouble with in the past.
Yeah.
I think I'm getting better at it now.
I don't think that's anyone's favorite part though.
And now I edit for Speculation Pub, so I actually do
Mhm.
love that part, but it took me a while to figure out where my strengths were with that and how my process had to work with that.
But our episode today is on art horror, and what about art pairs well with horror?
So I always think of enjoying horror as kind of a way to control the darkness, like a way to be familiar with what's hiding in the shadows and be ready for it. So, like, if you know that, like, there's a hell dimension in the basement, and you see how these people deal with it. You're like, "Okay, that didn't work for them, but this does, and next time when I'm in this situation with a hell dimension, like, I'll be able to handle this a little bit." Like, it just feels like it's a way to control the darkness. Whereas
Mm,
creating is kind of free falling into the darkness. Even if you're just making, like, a picture of sunflowers, you're really kind of, like, spelunking down into a dark cave of what? You're creating something out of nothing, like, out of this
yeah,
void that's inside of you, and it's a really vulnerable, scary process, that I think horror authors probably know maybe more than anybody else because we really mine, like, things inside of ourselves that we didn't even know were there.
yeah,
Fears that we didn't even realize were fears until we pull them out and put them on a page.
yeah. There is something, yeah, about writing horror where you are really digging into the deepest parts of yourself.
Mhm, and then when somebody reads it and it resonates with them, like, when you read something, you're like, "I didn't even know that terrified me, but now that I see it terrified somebody else," like, it makes you feel less alone in the dark.
Yeah. Yeah, I really enjoyed this as a setting, as a place for characters. I was also thinking of the famous or the beloved horror trope of, the spooky kid making creepy drawings.
And sometimes that kid is really, really actually a creep, and sometimes they're just misunderstood, and they're the ones that are gonna save everybody. It can
Yeah,
go either way.
that's true. They just know some information, and that is coming out via drawings.
Right, and that's what's honestly, it's kinda scary about creation is that they're not like, the artist isn't always is not in control of what's coming out, and a lot of, like, the stories that I read for this, like,
Mhm.
literally touch on that, like, the artist is not the one pulling the strings here, they're just a channel, like, they're just, like, an open portal, and that's kinda terrifying.
Yeah, like a conduit. So I mentioned the 2021 Candyman at the top of the episode
Mhm.
where the main character is an artist and he's working on a whole new. Have you seen the new Candyman?
I did see that one,
Yeah.
yes.
So yeah, he's an artist and the owner of the art gallery is named Clive. I love that as a nod to Clive Barker, but I mean you see that even within the story as he's trying to market this new series he wants to work on. He still has to market it under like, okay, like I'm your black artist, like this is the type of
Right.
art you want from me. It has to be like about black pain in America and the projects and like that's what this has to be under for you to even take anything from me. And we see the frustration within that character and ooh, a lot of good kills in the gallery.
Yeah, I loved that, and I love that, like, yeah, he's like he has a genuine vision that he's trying to bring out, and everybody's kinda trying to twist it to their own
Mhm.
agenda, and it sort of runs him right up to the edge of sanity and, the what happens.
Ooh, another movie that I thought of, I haven't watched it in a really long time, but did you ever watch Devil's Candy?
I did. So a couple months ago, I spoke with filmmaker Hope Madden, and this was one of the films she put out to me. So I loved it.
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna say this because have you ever seen Empire Records?
No,
Oh
I
my
know.
gosh.
I know every there's so many listeners right now that are upset with me. So
So in Empire Records, Ethan Embry is this like cute little metal kid
oh, I
who's like
love that.
listening to Guar and like, and I kind of felt like Devil's Candy was him grown up.
Yeah. This is off topic to the movie, but I thought he was just distractingly hot.
He was, and I would have never thought that of Ethan Embry. I was like, "Oh my god, Ethan, what did you do?"
Well, to be fair, there's like a lot of scenes where he's like, really in the zone painting and he's shirtless and I'm like, you're just like a dad. Like, why do
He's
you look like
so
this?"
ripped. I honestly I felt like the whole movie, like, the vision of the movie came from the climactic scene that involves fire and smashing guitars and,
Yeah.
like, serial killers, like, I felt like the director or the writer was like, "I have this vision, and it's the most metal vision I've ever had in my life, and I'm gonna make a whole movie out of this."
Yeah, it's a very metal movie. I mean, down to, like, I have to play my electric guitar to keep the sound of the devil
Yes,
away.
absolutely. And it wasn't like metal is bad either, which you see a lot
No.
in movies, like, it
Yeah.
was like, "Yeah, metal saves the day."
But I do remember because he's an artist and he gets kind of possessed and starts making these really dark, dark paintings that I think he destroys them at the end. I'm like, "I don't know, they were kinda good." Like, I feel like maybe you should have saved them.
That painting in the movie was probably one of the scariest paintings I've ever seen in my life, that the rest of the movie was great, but that painting will give me nightmares forever.
That movie did give me nightmares. It was one of the kidnapping scenes, but it unsettled me so much that I remember having a nightmare that night.
Oh, no. Yeah, it was a good movie, it was very disturbing, and it was one I didn't even hear about until Hope mentioned it to me, so, it was, just flew right under the radar for me.
Yeah, it's very underrated. I think I watched it several years ago just scrolling through Shudder. I had Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth on here. I don't know if you've seen this
"Hello,
one.
have you it's me you're waiting for?" Yeah, I don't know, I saw the first 2 Hellraisers. This is one that I just think I just didn't ever get to. I love the first 2 Hellraisers
I do
too.
too. I really like the Hellraiser franchise. I know I feel like that's a franchise that gets crapped on a lot by horror fans that say it loses its way. And I will say, like, way further down, it does lose its way. But I think the first 4 or 5 are
Okay. I'll keep that in
a
mind.
solid good time. Like, they're campy. And this one, I think, is much more campy because Pinhead is, like, actively out causing chaos, whereas, like, in the first 2, it's like, "I'm summoned. You summoned me. I'm
Right.
here to do my job. Here you go. I'm taking you back." Whereas this one, he's like, "I'm out, and I am causing chaos and doing shenanigans." But in the movie, there's, like, this douchey nightclub owner that buys this piece of just modern art sculpture that Pinhead is, like, fused into,
Okay.
and he, like, awakens him somehow and has to free him by giving him sacrifices. I didn't rewatch this one recently. I remember there also being, like, an art studio subplot, but when I was looking through, like, Wikipedia plot summaries, I didn't see that, so now I'm wondering if I imagined that or
This
if
is
that's
like
something
making
else.
I feel like this is compelling memories in me, so maybe I did see this at some point, maybe, when it was on
Yeah,
TV all the time back in, the early 2000s.
it's possible. I would say the famous thing is that, Pinhead, like, takes over a nightclub and turns people into Cenobites, and there's one Cenobite that
Mhm.
has CDs in his head, like, he's a
Oh,
CD
I
head
definitely
Cenobite.
saw that. I
Yes.
don't remember where, I don't have any idea when, and I don't remember anything of the plot, but I remember CD Head.
I'm like, that is the thing people will take away from this movie is that there is a Cenobite that has CDs embedded into his head.
Oh
This
my
is very
god.
1994.
Definitely.
I also had Hereditary on here. It is not technically
Yeah,
about the art, but we are following a main character who is an artist and a miniaturist.
right, and that movie that movie's everybody's nightmare movie, I think.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It absolutely is. I watched it with my husband, who's not a big horror guy, and that's not a movie to start someone out with who's, like,
No, it's not.
not a horror
I
person.
feel like I literally blocked portions of that movie out, I feel I guess, Hellraiser 3 apparently, but, I for, totally different reasons, I just have flashes of that movie, it just twisted in ways that I never expected, and yeah. The movie I had first on my list was Mandy, and that was another one I kinda stumbled across, and it's about a fantasy author and artist and her lumberjack husband, played by Nick Cage, in the woods. And as a side note, I love what Nick Cage is doing with his like
Yes.
third career as a horror
Yeah.
star. Like he's so good at it. He just throws himself so hard into his roles.
Mhm.
But Mandy, the artist, gets the attention of a cult leader who decides he's going to try to seduce her. And he calls in these like demonic bikers to kidnap her, as one does, and tries to seduce her, and she laughs at him. And that scene's probably like the peak of the movie, because from then on out it just gets like absolutely horrific, where Nick Cage has to go on like the most bloody, brutal killing spree that I've ever seen on film. And what this has to do with art is that the film itself is uses color so vividly and so strangely that it literally seems like an art piece more than a movie. And what I've been told is that the movie plays out and it actually is a art piece of a painting and a story told by Mandy at the very beginning, and it's just this whole fantasy scenario that she's plotting out, which I don't
That's
know,
interesting.
but that's what when I heard that I was like, "Oh, that's so cool."
That's an interesting way to look at it. I kind of wanna rewatch it through that lens.
Yeah, I kinda do too. I did not hear know that when I watched it. I was just like, "Wow, this is a lot of blood."
But we get that iconic scene with the grimacing smile with Nick Cage covered in
Oh
blood.
my god, I love that scene. I don't know why. Hereditary will give me nightmares forever, but that scene, I'm like, "Yeah."
There was a lot of that movie I was like, yeah, I'm like, "Is there a chainsaw fight about to happen right now?"
It just, like, built, like, it just went bonkers. I think that's why I enjoyed it so much, because 'cause I'm not typically, like, a slasher fan, like, in, like, the classic slasher way, but this was so over the top. It was, like, performance art.
Mhm.
So, then the next movie I have is stop motion, and did you see that one?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, actually, I started it. I'm like 60% of the way through it.
As
So
far as, like, visuals that will haunt you for the rest of your life, like, this movie, um, it was just intense, like, all the way
Mhm.
through. It had, like, that really great mood that just felt oppressive and then got more oppressive somehow. And it's about a young woman whose mother is a famous stop motion artist, but requires her daughter to help her make her films because she has arthritis, and it just immediately sets off with this really intense vibe of control,
Yeah.
and this girl who's, like, been suppressed and had all of her creativity suppressed her whole life. So as soon as her mother ends up in the hospital and she's free, and she immediately starts trying to make her own work, but it's like the shadow of her mother is just still there, like, hanging over her shoulder. So she meets this creepy girl who keeps kinda, like, giving her suggestions that, like, just keep crossing lines, and she keeps pushing back against it, but she can't work without doing these things the girl says, and she just completely spirals and loses
Mhm.
control of, like, what's reality and what's art.
Oh my gosh, and those puppet designs. Everything is so, like, gooey and wet.
Oh, yeah. I found out that some stop motion artists actually do use real meat
What?
for their puppets because of how it
No.
moves and how it, like, appears on screen, and I'm like,
No.
"Oh, that makes me very uncomfortable. That's information I didn't wanna know, so now you all know."
I just wonder, like, that muscle memory they have because in the opening scene, she's telling her, like, 2 millimeters to the left, like, 1 millimeter to the right, and I'm like, "Do your hands literally know exactly what a millimeter is?" Like, that's
Right,
crazy. I
and I
mean, I
guess
guess
they
you
do,
have to develop that, yeah.
but it's just, like, such a slow art form, and yet I mean, it's one of those really interesting, kind of almost archaic things that, like, you don't need anymore, but it's so beautiful when it's done correctly, like, people are gonna
Yeah.
continue to do it for the next 100 years, surely. And then the last movie I had on my list was Velvet Buzzsaw, um, which is almost like kind of like a silly movie that Netflix put out a couple years ago with, Jake Gyllenhaal and, Rene Russo. And I chose this one because it's like the opposite end of the spectrum of like these art elites who are trying to make as much money as they can off of like basically haunted paintings. They're so over the top. They're such terrible people, and all the kills are really kind of like almost ridiculous, but I thought it was fun. I know a lot of people didn't like that movie, but I thought it was a really fun, like, movie that really played on, like, the snobbery of the art scene.
I remember when this movie came out, and I feel like I heard that a lot, that people that were familiar with the art scene really enjoyed seeing that portrayed.
Just yeah, it was like these elites who literally don't care about anything or anyone and then accept the art, but they don't even care about the art. They really care about the clout that they get having discovered the art and the
Yes.
money that they're getting selling the art.
Well, should we talk about some books?
Yes, please.
All right. I will start off with Broken Monsters by Lauren Bucas. I think this was the first book I ever read by her. Have you read this one?
No, I haven't.
I really like her work. It kind of is a blend of horror, crime, and always like a little bit of fantasy, like at least the ones that I've read. And
Mhm.
this one it takes place in Detroit, and it opens up with the police stumbling upon this body that's actually two bodies, and it's this like half deer, half boy, like
Mm.
posed statue.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
Isn't it? It's giving Hannibal. It's giving and from there, you're following several different plot lines. So you're following one of the investigating officers, and then you're following like her teen daughter. Like her and her best friend are like catfishing pedophiles online. I remember that. I truly don't remember like where that goes, but I remember that being a detail because it's been several years.
Oh, wow.
And then you are following an artist who's been recently disgraced from like the Detroit art scene. And
Mhm.
then you're following a kind of wannabe journalist that has moved to Detroit as kind of like a disaster tourist. Like he kind of wants to write about like the real edgy, true side of Detroit. You're following all these threads as they all link together and they're all tied to this first body that is the first of like a few
Mm.
bodies and where this goes. And I thought this was just such a great blend of like that line between like crime and like a horror
So it was
supernatural.
like noir horror with art?
Yeah, kind of.
Nice.
But it just goes in such a like wild direction. And after I read this, I was like, I obviously need to read more Lauren Bucas. And she's from South Africa and she wrote about like Detroit, Michigan. Like she was, from there.
Wow. Yeah, I'll put her name on my list for sure. That sounds amazing.
So I would put this in the fridge.
Okay.
Um, like it did have some gruesome descriptions of, you know, half body statues
Oh,
and
yeah.
everything that comes with that.
I think I have, like, a particular, like, aversion to half body music or
Really.
using, like, at any time I run across that in anything, I'm like, "Hmm," but I think I could read that, like, as far as especially if it's, like, somebody trying to catch that person.
So that is Broken Monsters by Lauren Bucas.
So, my first book on the list was, Such a Pretty Smile by Christy DeMeester. And did you read this one?
I
I
did.
This book made me feel like I was jumping out of my skin at times, like, so I apparently hit on a certain theme that I'll mention when I finally get to my last book, that apparently goes hand in hand with art horror. But this one was about a like 12 or 13-year-old girl who's kind of like right on the edge of like puberty, and she's struggling a lot, feeling alone in her life. She's just kind of realized that she's gay, and her best friend is who she's in love with, and her best friend is like literally like the worst pick me jerk in the entire world. And her mom is very distant. Her mom is a famous sculptor,
Mhm.
and she's very distant and has kind of like a lot of rules for her of how a lady's supposed to act, how a young girl's supposed to act. And she's pushing against it, and she's at the same time there's a lot of really brutal killings going on around her, and they're all on girls her age. So her mother is kind of freaking out and trying to keep her safe. And what it turns out is that her mother, when she was younger, there was a similar killing spree. And it all kind of connects in this very, very like terrifying way. Um, that sort of goes hand in hand with what a girl should be and what a girl is and what's appropriate and what is not appropriate for young ladies, which I'm gonna have to say, like, I felt like just sort of rage
Mhm.
through the majority of reading this book because I hated just about everybody in it except for the 2 main characters, and I think that was very much intentional.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I remember reading this and everyone sucks. Like, if Christy Meester wanted to channel my
Oh
female
my
rage, she
gosh.
did.
Yes. That's absolutely it, and it all, like, becomes very obvious, that's the point. But particularly, I wanna point out the father and boyfriend of this woman or these women, I hate him the most.
Yes, I remember that.
I can't I actually had to put down the book several times and take a walk because I was so angry at all the little microaggressions that he just put out and against his ex-wife or ex-girlfriend and his daughter. Yeah, I don't have much words for it beyond that, but I just hated him so much. So I would say that was between the fridge and the freezer, I think. Like the tension in it was amazing. But it was kind of a burn all the way through. Whereas, like, I don't feel like there was a part where I just was scared crapless, more like I wanted to fight somebody the whole way.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, my next pick is Drawing Blood by Poppy Z. Bright. This I feel like was pretty intense. So,
Mhm,
trigger warnings for murder, suicide, self harm, and probably other stuff I'm not thinking of right now because it's a lot. So the synopsis for this is essentially after escaping from his North Carolina home after his father murders their family and commits suicide, Trevor McGee returns to confront the past and finds himself haunted by the same demons that drove his father to insanity. And in the book, Trevor's father was a renowned comic book artist, and Trevor is as well. And that plays into a lot of this.
mhm.
There's also a love story with this is written in 1993, a hacker who is a computer hacker. Uh,
That was one of my favorite parts, just like the '90s hacker, like, "This is a computer and I'm hacking it."
oh my gosh, that I loved that the chapter where Zach is, yeah, talking about his whole setup, and he's like, "With this laptop, I can do anything." And he's like, "I can plug into this and, like, you can't stop me." And I'm like, "Ah, the '90s, the the novelty of the internet."
Yeah.
Um but their love story. And it's tough because I've heard people say that they don't consider this a horror story, but I would put it in the freezer honestly just for the descriptions. I think if you are familiar with Poppy Z. Bright's work at all, like he does not hold back on descriptions, but he
Mhm.
also does it in this like beautiful flowery way where he's describing someone's like head mushed in with a hammer and it's just like beautiful. The
Right,
most
just
beautiful language.
I didn't get to read this whole book. I got about halfway through before I just kinda ran out of time, but just the first opening scene, like, that takes
Mhm.
place in the past was like, "This is absolutely terrifying," and yet so viscerally descriptive, like, I don't think I'll ever get those images out of my head.
That's truly it. But yeah, I can see where it's going, where I'm like, as the story, like, it is more about Trevor and this relationship and him confronting his demons and, like, addressing his past.
Coming to terms with it. Right.
That's the phrase I'm looking for. Yeah, coming to terms with his past. So I can see when people say like, "Oh, it's not really a horror story," but just the visuals alone. I'm just saying I listened to this on audio. Narrator was incredible, but this isn't like an audiobook to plug in, at work when you have the aux cord. Like it
The
is
kids are playing in the other room. Yeah, it's cool.
in the pickup line at school. There's just all the body fluids in this.
Yeah, he definitely has the description part down, and I feel like that is
Mhm.
like, that's part of the power of the book is
Yes.
that he's just willing to go there, and
Yes.
he's able to go there in a way that I don't know if I've seen other like, other artists and other, writers, like, be able to quite nail descriptions the way he does.
Absolutely. It's like beautifully gritty.
Mhm. It's also quintessentially 90s, I felt.
Yes. It was very 90s. Um, but I loved it. I know I've had people recommending Poppy Z Bright forever, so I'm glad I finally have read something by him. I definitely wanna pick more up just because I see the power in how well he just
Mhm.
describes things. I know we just keep saying that, but truly,
Yeah,
the power in just the description of gore.
absolutely, yeah.
So, for that alone, I am putting it in the freezer because I had my headphones on at work and I was, like, wincing and, like, physically like, "Ugh, ugh."
Oh, man.
And that is Drawing Blood by Poppy Z. Bright.
So the next one on my list was The Once Yellow House by Gemma Amor. Um, and I love this book so much, and it was another one that had some challenging moments for me where I had to put it down. It's the story of basically there was a disaster that happened on this property where a cult had kind of taken up, and the property belonged to a husband and wife, Thomas and Hope. And nobody quite knows what happens, but, like, basically, all of the sudden, there was an explosion or something, and a bunch of people died. Hope disappeared, and one sole survivor is now has now tracked her down and is trying to get the full story out of her, and it's told through Hope's diaries of the time and through interviews with this woman who calls herself Kate. And you don't know who Kate is until the end of the story, but it is definitely it's one of those like frog in a boiling pot of water stories where like you I would call it a fridge to room temperature story. I'm sorry, I keep going like right in between. Because we know what happens. We just don't know how it happened, and how it happened is definitely absolutely grotesque. We see Hope in this situation where she's like, "I'm just gonna stay a little bit longer. I'm just gonna stay little bit longer." It becomes clearer and clearer that Thomas, her husband, has is abusive, and this is the dynamic of an abusive relationship. But we have the added dynamic that Thomas is actively turning into some kind of deity that has called this cult. He has cultivated this cult. He is on Facebook, brought all these people here. And Hope is the one trying to stay together, stay in this relationship, just keep on holding on, keep on taking care of Thomas while Thomas is actively doing everything he can to abuse her, but not necessarily intentionally. And it's a very strange dynamic, and it's also a very familiar dynamic. And it was devastating. So now you have this version of Hope years later who's kind of telling the story still through this blurred lens of not quite knowing what happened. And it was a gorgeous story. It was terrifying. It was so gross and grotesque and weird at times, but it was, I think the brilliance of this book was that she told it in a way that every step past intolerable felt like, okay, it's just one more thing we can endure.
I have this on my Kindle, and I have been meaning to read it because I do love Gemma's books.
I think I forgot to make the art connection. So Hope is an artist
Okay.
in it.
I missed that.
I know, I get so excited about the book, I'm like,
Yeah.
I forget why we're even here, but she's an artist, and it think the part of the story is that she starts to draw what's going on, and it's like the one last piece of herself that she holds on to, that she's always
Mhm.
kinda put aside to serve her husband, and it's sort of like the part that allows her to keep her sanity.
Very excited to read this. I'm glad I already have it on my Kindle, so all I have to do is download it. And that is interesting. I know Gemma is an artist, and I think she did the cover art for this one.
Right. I think there's, like, there's some pieces sprinkled throughout, and I think she did them all, and it's
Ooh.
almost like she so when I was first reading the description of it, the way it's written is almost like it actually is just a journalistic, account, and I'm like,
Mhm.
Did this actually happen and, like, I missed it?" Like, it was so interesting, and then, and then it, she actually had it's written back and forth correspondences with the publisher who actually published the book, and I'm like, "Is she just calling herself Kate and this actually happened?" But, like, at some point, it does become clear that, it probably didn't happen.
That's funny. So it's got a good like meta angle.
Mhm.
Okay. I will have to check that out. Oh, and where does that one rank?
So, yeah, between the between fridge and room temperature, as far as just, like, the slow burn, like, constant.
I had an anthology I was going to pick up for this episode and I didn't get around to it, but she wrote the introduction. It was called Collage Macabre and it was literally called like a collection of art horror.
Mm.
But so listeners can check that out if they would like, but I didn't get to it in time. Um, but my last pick is Grim Portraits: The Dark Side of Art by Keelan Patrick Burke. This is a short collection of stories that all are essentially art horror. And he said his inspiration for this was Rod Serling's show Night Gallery, which I
Mm.
did not know about. And
No, I didn't either.
I kind of wish it was streaming somewhere. Of course, being a huge like Twilight Zone fan, I immediately
Yeah.
looked this up. Not available anywhere, of
Of course
course.
not. It
No.
had to
Rude.
be there.
But this is um if someone's looking for a quick read, this whole collection is 85 pages.
Wow.
So, it's good and they're very fascinating stories. Like I really loved the first one. Um it's about two people, trigger warning for suicide attempt, but someone who's about to jump off a bridge and meets with somebody and they just have this connection and you kind of realize that they both have a special connection to art. And
Mm.
as you go through the story, you find out like what that connection is. But I think my favorite story is the second one called Binding. It's very Clive Barker-esque. I
Mm.
love that he's gotten a shout out on like this
Yeah,
episode
this
several
episode
times.
is a little bit about Clive Barker here.
Yeah. But it's about a man who wakes up like bound to a bed and can't move and finds that he can only move his eyes.
Hmm. Yeah, that's uncomfortable.
It's one of those, like, absolute nightmare scenarios, and where the story goes, even more horrifying. So because it's several stories, I won't rate it because there's always variety in an anthology or a short story collection, but I had a really good time with it, and I read it when it came out, and then I reread it again before this episode, and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, holds up." So
Yeah.
that is Grim Portraits: The Dark Side of Art by Keelan Patrick Burke.
Keelan Patrick Burke actually had a story that helped inspire, I should say, the edits of Muse. So it's interesting that
Really?
He came up in here. Yeah, he's very good at writing compact stories and, like,
Mhm.
with maximum punch. So my 3rd story was Rose Matter by Stephen King, and I thought I remembered this because I literally read it, like, when it came out, and there's, like, a meme out there that, like, everybody, like, all the millennials and Gen X kids read Stephen King way too young, and that's definitely me because I was, like, in middle school reading, like, Rose Matter and It, and, um I decided to pick it up and read it again just to, like, refresh my memory, and I didn't remember anything from this book, which is fair, like, I shouldn't expect myself to read something or to remember something I read in 1995, but I was a little disappointed in myself. Um, but what's interesting is this very unintentionally, all 3 of the books I read were about domestic abuse and abuse, and women
Yeah.
gaining their power through art.
Yeah.
And that was not intentional at all, but it's really interesting because Rose Madder was definitely an influence for me. I was definitely like a Stephen King girly, like growing up, like, and I think what's funny is that learned about domestic abuse from Stephen King because he wrote so many novels that had to deal with it and gave a kind of like voice to
Mhm.
women, probably at a time when there weren't as many women in horror.
Yeah.
But I don't, I'm gonna make people mad saying that. I know there were maybe not as many being published by big publishers. But Rose Matter is about a woman, Rose, who after 16 years of like intense abuse from her cop husband just picks up and leaves and goes across the country and finds herself in a woman's shelter who helps her kind of get on her feet and establish a new life. And one of the symbols of this new life is this painting she finds in a pawn shop that's titled or like loosely titled Rose Matter. And she is just strongly compelled to have this painting. It's her first possession. She hangs it in her first apartment, it is the centerpiece of this apartment. And then it starts getting like supernatural. And she's seeing things in the painting that weren't there before. The painting sort of seems like it opens up and becomes alive, and the subject of the painting, this woman whose back is to the viewer, sort of inspires her to take chances in her life in places where she would have otherwise been too afraid. But meanwhile, her husband starts to disintegrate into basically a monster and come after her,
Wow.
and he has his own sort of powers that he's using to find her. And it culminates in this amazing, terrifying climax that just takes half the book. And I would call this a freezer book because of how absolutely terrifying King makes this husband character. I don't know if I've ever seen somebody go just this far, but King is really good at just showing the mental decline of a person into not just like into like the supernatural, into becoming a completely different being than what they were. And that's one of, I'd say, his signature traits.
Yeah.
It's and he just sometimes I get a little tired with like lengthy description, but I never get tired with how King lays people out. Like he really he digs right into them and gives you just absolute chaos and makes it make sense. I don't know.
I haven't read this one.
It's very 90s again, and there is a lot of like, "Oh, if this was written now, then maybe that wouldn't be written that way." But I do think it's worth the read as far as, like, the other things, like, I
Mhm.
don't think we can always get the woman's perspective and in this, but, like, I think that he does well enough that it's terrifying, and as far as, like, the husband, oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Like, I don't know if they ever made a movie out of this one, but, like, I'd say this is, like, one of, like, my
Mhm.
top 10 villains, like, it has a lot of, like, mythology influences and, like, oh, I this one just stuck with me, like,
Mhm.
all these years later, so, like and, like, the way that the art and the painting kind of, like, plays into it, it just felt very unique and very, weird.
Yeah. It sounds really interesting. I will say the only things I really knew about it were that it was about an abusive relationship and that it involved art.
Yeah, you wouldn't think that they would well, you wouldn't think they would tie together, but apparently they do in, like, all the books that I read. So, it's interesting, like, again,
That
like,
is
all of these
interesting.
books, like, had, like, art as an escape, art as a rescue, art as, like, the one thing that a woman could,
Mhm.
like, hook herself in on and, like, maintain that little core of herself.
Yeah. Right. Are we ready to talk chilling obsessions?
Sure.
Sure. What have you been enjoying lately?
So, my chilling obsession, I feel like it's not necessarily chilling, but it's just the best one I could come up with, which was Lilith. Like the demon Lilith,
Yeah, yeah.
the first wife of Adam Lilith. And part of why I'm obsessed with this is because um Nikki Marmory had a historical fantasy mythological fiction novel that came out recently that was definitely not horror, but just really great account of the life of Lilith and, like, from her perspective, and it was really good. And then I don't know if you've seen Has Been Hotel.
I haven't,
Oh my
no.
gosh, it is so fun. I absolutely love it. I'm just a little bit obsessed. And again, it has, like, Lilith as the demon, but also as the wife of Lucifer, the
Mhm.
queen of hell. And it's just the funnest show. And then have you seen the movie Pure?
Yes, the Hulu original?
Yes. Love
Yes.
that movie.
I do too, and I feel like it's underrated. Like, a lot of people didn't watch those Into the Dark originals. But if I were to rank them, I think that's my top. That's my
Mhm. I
favorite.
love that movie. It came out, like, in 2010. It's not, like, a new movie,
Mhm.
but I watched it just a couple years ago, and I'm like, "Ooh." So, I think for me, Lilith is kinda, like, at the center of, like, the female rage movement that's coming on right now, and it's almost like she's having her, like, second awakening, like,
Yeah.
we had Lilith there back in the '90s. I hear people talking about it a lot right now, like, kind of discussing what a great time it was. I unfortunately never got to go.
Mhm.
But I love the mythology. I love, like, the kind of, like, let's dig a little deeper on what we've been told about this, and I kinda like the dark female energy
Yeah.
power thing that's coming out with that. So, that's definitely what I've been chillingly obsessed with at the moment.
I love that as a whole obsession. I have been making my way through the Friday the 13th films again
Mhm.
for an upcoming episode, but they are just I'm not a huge Friday the 13th fan, like, I would say out of the horror franchises, it's
Mhm.
not my favorite, but it is perfect for summer. Like, for sitting in an air-conditioned room, I'm like, "This is exactly what I wanna watch,
It's so
actually."
fun.
On the plane back from StokerCon, I watched Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood, and then I watched Romy and Michelle's High School Reunion, and Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, and I'm like, "Actually, that was a perfect triple
That
feature."
sounds absolutely wonderful. What was the Friday the 13th with the psychic girl or the girl with telekinesis who accidentally
7.
woke up that was 7?
Yeah.
I just remember that one all I like, that's the one that always sticks out to me because she's just like, "I'm so pissed. I'm gonna accidentally conjure Jason."
She was trying to, like, get her wake up her father, who she also accidentally killed with her rage as a
Oh,
child.
alright. Yeah,
I do. I think my favorite part is watching what device they use to bring Jason back because at the end of every movie, they're like, "And he's taken care of. Don't
He's
worry
gone
about
for
it.
good until next
JK,
year.
this bolt of lightning will come up. JK, this girl with psychic powers."
Yes.
Like, there's always something.
I just yeah, it's fun. Like, it's just, what
Mhm.
could you even come up with now?
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know, but they're gonna do it. Is
He's in a cryogenic sleep.
that the space one? I never
Yes.
saw that one, but, like
Oh, it is camp. It is just pure camp. I love that one, unironically. Um, all right. Well, the second tradition we have on this show is to ask our guests for a final girl song. So, what is playing in your horror movie?
so, I was not intentional, again, but I definitely, like, leaned into, like, the '90s and early 2000s here. And my final girl song would definitely be "Limp" by Fiona Apple.
I
Um,
love it.
I saw Fiona in concert in the 2000s, and she has this very raw
Yeah.
energy, and it just comes across the entire, like, concert. Like, everybody's feeling it. Everybody's got, like, she is like the dark female energy, and Limp is one of those songs that, like, it's got this very creepy edge to it, like, just the
Mhm.
hook with the piano in the beginning, and then when you listen to the lyrics, they gut you. Um, so to me, that speaks very much to being in a very bad abusive relationship and trying to claw your way out, trying to come to terms with the fact that you're not out yet, but once you get out, you're gonna mess stuff up. And I feel
Yeah.
like it coincides with also being a final girl. Like, you might have me now, but when I get out of here, I'm gonna mess you up. And that's me, you know.
That is good final girl energy to have.
Yeah. So, Fiona's completely good with just being absolutely raw and having really sharp teeth.
Yeah. I'm glad she's getting added to the playlist.
Ah, yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on here and chatting art horror with me.
This was a lot of fun. Thank you so
It
much for
was.
having me.
Of course. Where can people find you online?
So, my website is lcwallingham.com. I also have all my speculation publication projects going on at speculationpub.com. I'm on, like, most socials. I'm not good with Blue Sky yet, but I'm there, and someday I'll remember my password and update it. But it's usually generally any variation of LCW Allingham, LCWA. On TikTok as LCWA, author, I think. And you can generally find my links on my website.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. It was great.
Books in the Freezer is a bi weekly podcast posting episodes every other Tuesday. You can find us on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Books in the Freezer, or send us an email at booksinthefreezer@gmail.com. Show notes for this episode and all previous episodes are at booksinthefreezer.com, where you can find a list of all the books mentioned in this episode, as well as links to a few different ways you can support the podcast if that's something you want to do. There are affiliate links and there are also links to merch. So you can buy your very own What's Your Final Girl Song t-shirt or sweater or mug or sticker. And there is also a link to the Patreon where you can choose to support at the $1, $3, or $5 level. And of course, there are different perks to each tier. So if that's something you want to do, the link is on the show notes, or you can just go to patreon.com/booksinthefreezer. I have been your host, Stephanie Gagne. Thank you so much for listening, and see you next time on Books in the Freezer.